Actually, before coming to how to use this setup or how to use Vuex in bigger applications and how we might organize it with different files, let me highlight one important special case. Imagine the following. In our store, we now not only got the counter, but we also got, let's say, the value, the global value. It's 0 initially. Now this value shall be set in any of our components. So for that, I will quickly set up a getter, which I'll simply name value. And here I get my state, and I simply want to return state value like this. And I want to create a mutation for it, which I'll name update value, which gets the state and the payload. And then here I simply want to set state value equal to payload, so that the new payload is just a number which should be the new value. And I will set up an action for this. The action I want to set up is also called update value. And here I do get my object where I'm only interested in the commit method, and I do get my payload, and therefore I can then call commit update value, which is the name of the mutation I want to execute, and pass on the payload. So far, so standard. That's nothing we haven't done yet. Now in the app.view file, let's say, here I want to add a new horizontal line below all my counter stuff, and I want to add an input, which is of type text, which actually should allow me to set this value. So here is where it becomes tricky. I'll quickly set up my computed property for value. I'll name it value like this. And here I simply want to return this store getter's value. That's the name of the getter I created for that. And if I set value equal to value here, and we see this in the application, we see it works. We see 0 here. But what's the issue we got here? Well, let's say we actually want to not only display the value, but set it. So vModel value will not work because value is a computed property, not a normal property. Computed only returns as a value. So if we do this and update it and write 10 here, our state will not be affected by this. We can see this by simply adding a paragraph down there where I output value like this. If I do that, you see it doesn't change if I type up here, because the state in our store isn't touched, because our computed value here is only a getter. We're not able to set it with two-way binding like we want to do here. How can we fix this? Well, here's one way how we could fix it. This is, we set up a method, and in this method, which I'll call update value, for example, all I want to do is get my event here, of course, and then simply call this store dispatch update value and pass event target value as an argument. So the value of this input field as an argument. With that in place, I can go up to my input and change this back to just value for now because we're not two-way binding. Instead, add the input event here and execute update value on it. So this newly created method. With that, if I reload this and I enter something here, you see the state gets updated as well. So now it's working, but the problem is, well, it's our custom two-way binding we set up here. What if we really wanted to use the shorter way of using vModel value? That would be much nicer, wouldn't it? Well, we can do it by ignoring this method and instead changing our computed property. Something I haven't really shown until now is that you can, for computed properties, set up a getter and a setter. I didn't show it because you rarely need that. Most of the time, you only want to get the data. That's what a computed property is there for. But you can turn your computed property into an object where you then have a get and a set method. The getter is, of course, responsible for getting the value. So that is what your computed property would always be like. And then the setter is this new thing which you rarely use. So here in the setter, you get the value, and then you can simply call this store dispatch update value here and pass the value. So again, this is something I didn't show before because using a setter in a computed property is something you rarely need because you rarely want to set something there. Computed in the end means it depends on something else and gets recalculated. And this is a very rare exception where we want to do something whenever we try to set the value. So if we do that and reload this, you now see it still works now by using vModel up here and our computed property, which now actually is an object with a getter and a setter. Again, use with caution. This is one of the very rare places where you want to use a getter and a setter, but here it's perfectly fine because this now allows us to use vModel with our property, which is bound to the state of our application.